Rob Oliver, let's go. Tell me about what you were doing from the ages of 24 to 26.
24 to 26 feels like a different lifetime ago. At that time, I was in the trenches of building Genius Brand. That was my first e-com company. And there was actually dramatic changes from during those times. Like 24 was still, we grew so fast. I would say those were two of the most impactful learning years of my life, because we went from, a little over $1 million a year to, I think what was that? That would have been 2016-ish. Something like that, close to $30 million a year. And that happened in a 3-year window span. And so I look nothing like I do now. Like, I feel disconnected from that person in so many ways. It's actually an issue because I get asked a lot of time for business advice to speak to that younger you. And there were so many things that person was doing wrong. And I think a lot of people see the end result. I made a lot of money and I got to escape or whatever. But if I could go back, there were some things we'd correct.
Yeah. What do you think some of those things are?
I didn't appreciate the value of a good business. I didn't treat relationships the way they were supposed to be treated internally. The truth is that I could have built that to be a $100 million company, but we started to break down internally. I hired a lot of my friends from college and basketball. And as this company's growing, emotions start to happen. Whenever money gets involved, relationships start to change. People want their piece of it, right? And sometimes that's rational, sometimes it's not. But me as the leader of that organization wanted nothing to do with it, and often made it worse. I lived a very low-key, call it humble life. On paper, we're making a couple $1 million a year, and I'm still living in the same condo. I was actually living at my parents' house while we were still bringing in 7 figures in the beginning. And I expected that to kind of reverberate through, and I didn't put myself in the shoes of each individual that was working there without this massive equity piece, right? Because I'm like, hey, I own all of this.
Yep.
And so I don't want to take cash out. I want to sell it one day for a lot of money. And so I just didn't have a good sense of that. And some bridges were burned that I just wish they weren't.
Yep. I had a past guest describe it to me as like learning taxes.
Learning taxes?
Learning taxes.
Yeah.
Like there's still prices you pay when you're starting the business.
Oh, you pay all sorts of them. And I'd also say I was very pigeonholed in the sense of I didn't consume content. I didn't spend much time on social media. I didn't have mentors. Mm-hmm. I was really a guy, I took a lot of pride in being a guy that figures it out. Mm-hmm. And so I locked myself in that room. It's the old Kanye meme, doing 5 beats a day for 3 summers. I locked myself in there with that Amazon algorithm and I said, I'm going to figure this out. And I don't want to talk to anyone because I know more than them and I don't need any advice and I'm not watching any podcasts and self-improvement can fuck off and I'm making a bunch of money.
Yep.
And that wasn't the right approach. Now that was maybe typical for a 23, 24, 25-year-old guy who's making a bunch of money. But if I could go back, I might slap myself once or twice,
Yep. And yeah, that when you lock yourself into that house and you just grinding for those 3 straight summers, and you talk now about living to live.
Living for a living.
Living for a living. And it's an interesting dichotomy about I think a lot of younger guys are struggling with this now because they see that grind set type of content out there, but at the same time they want to live their life and they don't really know where in that spectrum they should find themselves in, and they kind of feel guilty if they're grinding all the time and they feel guilty if they're chilling. And I think anywhere kind of along that spectrum there's a bit of a price to pay for it, and I think even for myself I struggle with trying to figure out where on that spectrum to fall.
So picture this. You wake up, you go through the hardest 6 months of your life. You're building a business while trying to exit it to private equity. You wake up one day and there is a double-digit $1 million number in your bank account. And you made it. That's the thing. You're not yet 30 and you're staring at this number on a screen. It doesn't feel real. You literally refresh it a couple times and it's a big exhale and you're like, wow, pulled this off. I am different than everybody now. Forever. And then the next day comes around and you feel nothing. It is a number on a screen. I had nothing I wanted to buy. I'm in the same house. I sat there for 2 years with this money in a high interest saving account, not doing shit. And it was kind of at that moment that it hit me that there's a lot of people with money. And most of those people I wouldn't trade my life with under any circumstances. Like I look back to my basketball days, and it's like those were more enjoyable years than the lull after selling that business and being there with just these numbers on a screen. And so through, a lot of different trials and tribulations and, I guess self-discovery moments after exiting that business, it led me to this idea of living for a living. And people wonder, like, what is this dichotomy of grind set and having fun and experiences? And the truth is, if you keep your foot on the floor indefinitely on all of it, you can do all of it. Like, you can actually do all of it. You can't go be a degenerate partying for a month at a time. But if you go to Vegas with your team and you guys are working on stuff and there is some fun that night and everyone knows they got to get an IV the next day and keep working, like, it tends to sort itself out. Yep. There's an intuitive sense within all of us that tells us if we're doing enough of the progress, of the focus. And so I could just break it down, like kind of how my life's designed now, because I would say since I committed to this, you call it life maxing or living for a living, I have been the happiest I've ever been. And I've done more than I've ever done. Like, since I've taken the training wheels off and stopped worrying about balance and hoarding money, like, I genuinely spent 2 years thinking, how can I protect this? How can I make sure I never lose this, right? And that was just retarded. And since I've changed that, the more I've put out there, I'll do crazy stuff. And it almost always comes back to me tenfold, especially when you're with your people that you want to be building with. I don't know, my partner, Jimmy Farley?
I've seen him on Twitter a few times.
Yeah, Jim Poppy on IG. I shout him out every time. But a 23-year-old kid that, he's fully in that. I've watched him. When I met him, he was making 10 grand a month, which is like, I guess cool for a lot of 21-year-olds. And since he's adopted this whole abundance and life maxing thing, bro's making $300,000-$400,000 a month now. And he's got equity in these brands, and he's buying the new car, putting the top shelf license plate on it, but just constantly putting it out there. And like, for me, it's like, I look at that, I have these millions, I used to not want to fly private, and then it's like, for Jimmy's birthday, I can get a jet, it's $35,000, that seems ridiculous, but that's going to be a memory forever that when we look back, it's like, that was special, right? And so the more I've invested in those experiences, the more it's come back to me tenfold. And I'm just encouraging young people to buy into this, to buy into more of a Renaissance philosophy with their life. Be well-rounded, like, max out all of the stats. Choose your stats and max them out. Don't just be one-dimensional. And the more people do that, the more fulfillment they find.
Yeah. I've also found that there's this weird thing where, like, how hard we view how hard you work as like a badge of honor, when, like, a lot of times that's disconnected from the result. Like, yeah. I found that a lot.
It's extremely disconnected from the result in today's world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I found that through like Dan Co. Do you know Dan Co?
I know Dan, yeah.
So I did a pod with Dan, and I did it right after doing an in-person one with someone else. And they had this big ass team working like hours and hours a day, like 10+ hour days. And then I go and hang out with Dan. He does 2 hours of writing at a coffee shop. And then we lift for 2 hours, get lunch, blah, blah, blah.
Walks around thinking. And he says, like, yeah, that's my daily routine. I do that every day. Mm-hmm. And he was pulling in 10x, 20x what that other guy was doing. Mm-hmm. And they were in the same industry. It wasn't like there were two different businesses. It's like almost mirrored businesses, but done in two completely different ways with two completely different outcomes. And it was like so disconnected from how hard they were working. Well, shame on Alex Hormozy on that one, not to throw shade, but maybe a little bit. That guy has made, like, that is one guy when I look at who I would never trade lives with. And that's one of them, if that's for real. Now, I'm a personal branding guy, and I think I study a lot of these elements. Like Iman dresses a certain way, Hormozy's always wearing that. I'm not so sure Hormozy actually works 24/7 and is what he loves to do, and he's unhappy otherwise. But in general, that particular lifestyle of this is all I'm gonna do, and I'm just wired this way, and I have my coffee, and I go to my gym, and I would kill myself. I mean, really. And so I think we need to be so aware of the fact that the input of actual hard work is incredibly disconnected from the outcome. Just as you were going in detail there, like, in the digital world, you can find a single winning Facebook ad and make $10 million just off creativity and a good thought, right? You can sit at that computer all day, punch in spreadsheets or whatever, and make no money. And so how you channel your work and how you find the right opportunities and the right vehicles, that's what ultimately matters.
So how do you think about that for yourself? Because obviously there's a full spectrum of things you can be working on for the businesses. How do you know what is the highest leverage activities for you? Have you figured that out?
I don't feel like I'm ever working.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm committed to very specific things. I think focus is really important. That's the downside of building in the digital world. There's a million shiny objects. And the great paradox with that is the more successful you get, the better the opportunities that present themselves to you. But the truth is that almost all of your returns are still going to come from hyper specializing in one thing. Mm-hmm. And so all I do all day is my very particular TikTok, Amazon, and social media thing. And there's always in some bucket there, and I'm trying to build teams and systems and process around all of that so it allows a level of freedom so I can continue to do the things I like. Because the truth is I like all of it. I love making content. I love having conversations like this. I love winning on TikTok Shop. I love creating products. I love seeing the affiliates make money representing our products. Like I love all those components. Now there's things I don't like ops and supply chain and accounting, but those are the first things I hire for, right? And solve for that so you can keep living for a living.
I want to get into that TikTok Shop stuff because it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm curious first about why go hard in the personal brand stuff? Because you already have the money, you built the brand before even really talking about too much stuff. What was the decision to kind of go all in content?
It's just so clear to me that attention and influence is one of the most meaningful currencies of this generation. I'd say influence in particular. And the way you can cultivate that with social media and the doors that can open and the connections that you can make will change your life, indefinitely. And I used to be a guy that would sit in my room and very introverted, just wanted to work. And the second I took that energy and started to put it more into personal brand, the biggest relationship that's changed my life over the past 2 years has been Jimmy. We were kind of the perfect dream team, the white Splash Brothers of e-commerce, you know? And that came from social. He would have no idea who I was if I wasn't making content and putting myself out there and trying to bring value. You have to put good things out there. And then I realized I like it. And the second those relationships started, that's just one of many. And the second those started to come to fruition, I'm like, yo, this is a great game. And then you zoom out and it's like, well, it's clearly not going anywhere, right? It's only becoming more powerful. As much as I just bashed on Hormozy, talk about a personal brand, he has people giving him huge chunks of their company because they like him, right? And so that's influence. You look at Iman, he can go do a drink company. I love the center of all of that. I think in my heart, in my true soul, I just want to have an impact on popular culture in some way, shape, or form. Whether that be one day, getting more involved in music or managing fighters or whatever it might be. But design is what I inherently enjoy. As you keep seeing Top Shelf, my main supplement brand and I guess men's lifestyle brand take shape, I want that to be a Chrome Hearts-esque thing in 20 years. And that's where my passion's at. That's where I don't feel like I'm working. And I think the more we can align ourselves with those types of things on an individual basis, the better off our life's going to be and the more likely we will be to achieve that.
Yeah. And that creativity is that outlet.
1,000%.
And yeah, combining that with business is that's where it's at. That's especially when you combine it with all the success you've had. And you look at so many people who've had that success and then go into a meaning crisis for the next 20 years. Seems like it's because they're just disconnected from that creativity.
I believe the quote is creativity without business is victimization and business without creativity is just dumb. I believe that's a Pharrell Williams quote.
It's a great quote.
It's fantastic. And bringing those pieces together in a way that is free flowing and fun. It's that's what I said. I probably work more than 99 out of 100 people. Yeah. You never hear me yell about it oh, I'm just fucking grinding or whatever, because I've set my life up in a way that none of it is work. When I go train Muay Thai or go spar boxing, that's part of my work. We're often filming it. I love this shit. I genuinely love it. I want to take a fight, you know? Jake, you ever want to run on the island, let me know. No, he's doing well. But like that is living for a living. Like that's part of my personal brand. This whole rob the bank is a character. It's still me, but it's an amplified character, and it allows me to max out my stats. It allows me to pursue the things I really like, and I get to document all of that. And at the end of the day, I want that rob the bank character to just be inspiration for anyone that is tired of living for anyone else's expectations. Yeah. That's what I want that person to be. That is why I don't care how I dress. Like I woke up realizing that I was blessed enough to make enough money young where I'm never going to have to answer to anyone ever again in any meaningful way. And so what can I do what can I do with that? And I think one of the highest leverage things from like a legacy standpoint is to serve as a symbol of like not giving a fuck. Yeah. Too many people give a fuck. And it kills them. They end up living their lives with expectations for what others want from them. It could be a parent, it could be friend groups, but the end result is what you see in modern America. Punching a clock, living off coffee, getting home on the couch, Netflix, SSRIs. Fuck, like I want no part of that. And so how can we turn that tide? It's like, well, I'm trying.
Dude, I love that you brought the conversation there because it's one of those things that like, so I'm 23, right? So like in college, I saw so many people get opportunities that they strayed away from because they were scared of like putting themselves out there. And I think about with the podcast, like I almost didn't do this thing because I was fucking embarrassed, like what people from high school would say when I first started like starting a podcast in college. And just like you were saying, the relationships, everything you develop from putting yourself out there and stop giving a fuck.
You create a whole new life for yourself.
And the thing about it is like people are so attracted to that because it's so rare. Yeah. Like everyone is so afraid to be themselves that when you actually are yourself, it's just like a gravity pull.
No, 100%. And here's the kicker on that. It never stops. You just work through waves of tiers of people that then eventually respect it. Like when I started, I love fashion and I'll push it sometimes. I'll wear different stuff. And, I'll have people like, oh, that's gay or this. And it's like, like, okay, like, that's fine. I don't care. And then the more, and then, okay, the engagement comes with it. And I'm seeing it different. And this happens or that happens. And one of my really good friends, actually, crazy story. He is a multimillionaire, like very wealthy guy, nuts. Real Boss Daddy was his name on TikTok. He got like billions of views. But anyways, this guy kind of has a fluke deal where he goes to prison. And he goes to prison right as I'm starting on personal brand. And he used to rip me like every single day. He'd send my videos and he'd be like, just trolling nonstop. And it's just kind of his personality, so I just take it, right? And he gets locked up for 18 months on kind of some crazy shit. But he gets out and he sees all my stuff. He sees rob the bank. He sees, it was right around Jimmy's birthday party. We were doing some crazy stuff. And he goes, what the fuck? He goes, I'm actually jealous. He goes, I'm actually jealous of your life. And I was like, yeah, like you were telling me in the beginning, like this is stupid and you're not like da 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 da. And I've made more money. But if I would have listened to him, I'd be stuck in the same spot. If I like my dad, even I'm making. He knows I'm making great money. Like he's seen the growth in my life and take care of my family and all that. And there was late last year, I was like, fuck it. I painted my nails. I did this crazy 777 and like Monopoly and da da da. And he comes over and we're talking about business or whatever. And I had a huge month too. And I think he heard the month and it kind of bothered him. And he goes, well, your nails are gay. And again, I'm like, I'm 6'4", I can spar, like, I'm like, like whatever. And then I kind of brush it off. He keeps talking. He goes, well, I just hope you don't believe your own shit. I'm like, damn, like you're trying to get to the center. But that's one where I've been through enough of those where it's like, that's a reflection on you. Well, you're projecting some reflection on me. And that's what people are often doing. They're projecting their own insecurities, their own failures onto you. And I say, I can take that because I want that other kid who maybe is scared about starting that podcast or maybe is scared of launching his fashion brand or scared of starting to do talking head TikTok because he's worried about what his friends are going to think. I want them to see me and go, fuck it. That guy was already rich, and then it changed his life dramatically even more. Why am I not doing this? The world's clearly going that way.
It's cool of your friend to, or of that guy to like actually come back and be like, fuck, look, I'm jealous. That's a rare trait though.
Well, he's a highly intelligent guy, absolute character, lowest time preference I've ever seen. Probably one of the smartest people I know. Like ex-Wall Street guy who basically got kicked out of his firm for soliciting hookers. And this was like really, he's like 40 now. He's really young then. Falls into the Amazon game. Masters like black hat, crazy Amazon shit. We know each other because he attacked my brand like crazy. Had to call him out. We ended up like keeping in touch over the years. He's exited a couple of these companies. He's probably worth 20 million, but he's nuts. You go in his house, he moved to St. Martin. He's like, fuck the US. And you go in his condo there and there's like a 7-foot paint self-portrait of him in a bathrobe smoking a cigar. He has a self-portrait of himself as Patrick Bateman in that scene with the chick's leg up on his shoulder. I kid you not, he's a fucking character.
That kind of guy.
And yeah, that kind of guy. And so he's intense and he wants to party and he wants the girl. Like he in a lot of ways, he life maxes. Like give it, like he doesn't work that hard. He finds these crazy opportunities. Like he sold an Amazon business for like $10 million. But sometimes he pushes it a little too far. He pissed off the wrong person. Someone was friends with a federal judge and the FBI arrested him on some crazy stuff and he spent 1.5 years in a federal holding cell. Like really crazy shit. Yeah. And so again, that's just one of those people though that he, even in those times, was projecting, right? And he's self-aware enough that, I mean, now, he's been out a little bit. He's still, that's still kind of gay, bro. That's kind of, it's how he is, but
Exactly, dude. So let's break down TikTok Shop.
Yeah.
Because such a weird thing going on right now that if I didn't know people directly that were doing numbers on
wouldn't even believe it.
I wouldn't even fucking believe it.
So it's like early Amazon. Every 7 years, crazy opportunities happen where a lot of people make money. And you hear people like, oh, Amazon FBA saturated, nowadays. That message exists because course gurus 10 years ago, when it was like super easy, you could literally, call a manufacturer in Alibaba, match some search data, throw something on Amazon and make passive income. The platform matured. It got way more difficult. You had to be building real brands. You had to like know what you're doing, right? Amazon is still wide open as ever. But in terms of like how easy it was back then, like an idiot could make serious money because it was so new and not many people knew about it. And then by the time everyone knew about it, it's like, okay, TikTok Shop is 6 months old, 7 months old, 8 months. I don't know. Not very old. And they are going so hard on e-commerce that I woke up and I go, oh my God, it's Amazon all over again. Like, holy shit. Because very rarely, seldom do you have times in e-com history where you can put $1 in the machine and make 5, right? Usually it's like you need this perfect product and you need a winning, but Amazon back in the day was like, no, I could literally spend $1 and make 5. So the question was, how much money can I spend, right? And that, like, one of the reasons I did well is I poured in. I didn't take money out. I constantly reinvested in new products, and now we're seeing that again with TikTok. It's like staring you in the face, and you're seeing 18, 19-year-old kids as affiliates make 10, 20. Luis, I don't know if you saw his story with me. He made $120,000 in a month as an affiliate, and so as a brand owner in the center of this, I'm going, wow, it's a totally new game.
Yeah,
like it's not ads based. It's live shopping. It's what they do in Asia. And TikTok it's masterful. It's a art of war, really. They come in and they get everyone addicted to the platform, 1 billion plus users globally. And they say, we're not gonna make the same mistake Twitter made. We need this to be a place where people buy. Or maybe that was their plan all along, right? And now they're forcing that Asia-bred way of shopping into the United States, and it's gonna win. IG Shop's already following, YouTube Shop's already following, but people across the world buy with live videos. Or short form videos and live videos. And so TikTok has set up this masterful platform where they have all these people ready to buy. They're making it easy to do shop. And now the question is like, which brands are going to become $9 or billion enterprises? Like, I mean, some of the numbers are real. There's this Guru Nanda, who's like a healthy Amazon brand, maybe doing, I don't know, maybe 20 million a year, right? They've already done 38 million on TikTok Shop. And then they're discovered everywhere else because people are on their phones. Like, that's how my wife learns about new things. When we go to a new town now, like we went to Japan last year, she's not Yelping stuff anymore. She's literally looking at TikTok. She wants to see the food. She wants to, and so that's the fundamental earth-shifting thing happening. The question is, how long will it last? Like, where will it get more? Because eventually it won't just dramatically change. I mean, they could get banned, but in general, it won't dramatically change. You'll just get 10 million people doing affiliate. And so they're getting less views, and you'll get 10 million brands. And the ones that didn't start early are no longer able to crack it, right? Without more affiliates. And so the costs go up. That's how these things typically look. But right now we're in like day one. And I woke up, I kind of have a platform and I'm building on there. So I'm like, oh, cool. let me tell the people. Let me be the reason it's going to get saturated. But in that process, I get more affiliates, right? Like I'm creating the brands for these kids to start living for a living. Kind of the ones repping Top Shelf, they're solving the money problem. They get to be part of the whole, like Top Shelf lifestyle is synonymous with living for a living. These same kids are starting boxing. They're starting to travel more, figure out like all of it, right? And so for me, it's beautiful. We've been able to create this vehicle that's changing lives.
It's there's the two sides of it. There's like the starting the brand and then getting affiliates, and then there's the affiliate side of things. Seems like both make a lot of money. So what do you think for people like thinking about getting into the game? If they're younger, don't have that e-com experience, probably best to start with the affiliate game?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's just a matter of, one thing that's really cool with TikTok Shop is you don't need a lot of money to start a brand either. Like one of my, I run that community $1 Million Brand Club, and one of my favorite student stories is this Hyper Tape company. It's just mouth tape. And they started that with like a couple grand because it's like a $1.50 product that sells for 18. Find a manufacturer in China and launch on TikTok Shop. So it's not incredibly difficult to start a brand on there, and the upside's greater because you're ultimately creating an equity. It's an asset, right? Whereas you as a creator is freelance. I would say in general, if you're native to the phone and don't have very much business experience, like if you're, I don't know, what generation, did you always have a phone growing up?
No, I probably didn't get a phone until like middle school. Like
middle school though, yeah.
Yeah,
so
like
right around your age, like pretty much raised with one. Like I didn't get one till end of high school.
Yeah, okay.
And so
you didn't have a phone till end of high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
For real, yeah. Like it was, or like, I think maybe sophomore year, junior year. And Jimmy's like, I'm making TikToks in high school. So that generation is more primed to communicate on that app, right? Like if I wanted to sit down and learn how to make this content that goes viral on products, it's me learning another language first. They already speak the language. And so I'd say if you're in that world with no business experience, what a great way to make your first 10,000. Everyone wants to hear $10,000 a month. I think that's like a Iman thing or whatever. But that really is a great way to make your first 10,000. But if you have some business experience and you've really wanted to go for it and create something that lasts for the long term, then launching a brand on there is like, you're not going to see many windows like this.
Yep. I have I have a friend who is starting to get into the affiliate side of things, and his dad's a private equity guy. Okay. And he was like, yeah, my dad just like can't wrap his brain around it. And I was like, dude, that just goes to show. Like,
it's a generation thing.
Like,
no, like my dad can't. I mean, again, even my dad, he's a successful blue collar guy, but like old school, no college, bought a warehouse. Like a lot of his money came from buying a warehouse. And hard worker, but like the thought of even something like crypto to him, like magic internet money that goes up. I bought Bitcoin at 7,000, and he is waiting for it to go to zero so he can say I told you so. Like he will never be like, yeah, that was a thing. And so he's like, you're making money with this content stuff? Like where are you? What's he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
And they won't get it. And again, that's even more of a reason because at a certain point, like I'm taking my family, my parents included, to Jackson Hole. I'm chartering them a jet. Like, I'm doing it. And they're gonna, like, what are you gonna say? They're gonna have a great time. They're gonna have a blast,
Literally.
And it's because of this magic internet money stuff. Yeah. And so you really just have to prove it to people.
Exactly. And what's interesting about that though is so many of those guys that like, I guess are past like, let's say 40 and older, who are those guys with seasoned business veterans, they're like eliminated from the game because they don't even get it.
Correct.
So it takes these people who haven't really, it's like, if you have that business acumen and you're younger, it's just this opportunity that's like almost like a blue ocean.
And hold on though with that too. This is a note to my future self. And a lot of the most successful older people I know, they remain lifelong students. Like my one main mentor, he's 60 years old. He's a billionaire. He's about as low key as can be. And he values he's like, why does a guy like that want to talk to me? because he wants to know how the world is still working. He knows he's not going to be on TikTok. He knows he's not going to be, using AI, but he is a student for life. Yep. And the great minds that absorb that, even myself now, I'm not, they call me Uncle Rob now. I'm Unc. And if I had the attitude that I know everything, me and Jimmy would have never built a relationship. He's that kid, right? And for him, it's like, oh, I have this business experience, so it's great it's like a very synergistic relationship. But remaining a lifelong student and then always remembering, this is my favorite Kanye rant. He freaks out and he goes, if you're like, all the ideas come from younger people. All the good ideas come from younger people. If you're older than me, don't tell me anything. You can help me, but if you're older than me, don't tell me anything. And you look at that, even like in something like music, you look at how Drake stayed relevant.
That's
right?
what I was gonna say.
Time and time again, like who's his best little music buddy now? It's Lil Yachty. Lil Yachty's 26. It's a whole new style.
Yep.
Lil Yachty's ghostwriting some of these songs. It leaked, but that is the game. Like times change, cultures change, and older people always think it's stupid.
Yep.
And if you're not humble enough to acknowledge that it's the future, regardless of if you think it's stupid or not, you're going to fail. You're eventually going to fall out of the game. So I hope to stay indefinitely mentally young, right? And mentally like on the forefront of what's going on.
I have so much respect for Drake for that. Like if you think about, like he gets shit on a lot for like changing his sound.
No, but the numbers are the numbers.
He just evolved with time and saw what was hot and then just applied his own acumen to the game.
A formula developed over 15 years of excellence.
Yep.
And like I grew up in the Drake era. Like his So Far Gone was right when I was in high school, and I've grown up with Drake. And I didn't particularly care for Drake most of my life. He wasn't my favorite artist. I thought a lot of Drake fans were goofy. And then this last album comes out, For All the Dogs, and he's doing this tour, and he's doing the tour like he's Kobe. It was like a victory lap where it's like, say whatever you guys want to say. I'm packing out these arenas. I've sold more records than anybody, and I am just basking in the glow of all of it. And I took a step back and I go, how can you not respect someone that stayed at the top of the game for a long time? I mean, there are flashes in the pan every 2 weeks, right? But a guy that can stay at the very top, a Kobe, a Drake, a Jeter, Michael Jordan, we know the names.
Yep.
And he's achieved that. And so I have nothing bad to say in that world. And I went to the last one in Miami, and I was like, yo, this is phenomenal.
Yeah. It's like that Taoism philosophy of like being like water, just evolving.
Fluid.
Just fluid.
A lot of the best hedge fund guys are like that. I've tried to, everyone, you say the name George Soros and everyone freaks out, but he's a fantastic investor.
Yep.
I mean, one of the best of all time. And one of the things he's known for is changing his mind on a whim. Like with the slightest bit of information, he'll change a $10 billion position. He's fluid as hell. And I've tried to really, you need to have conviction in things you do in business, but at the same time, like on my side, if there's a reason to change, I have no problem changing it. You always got to stay really firm on the vision, on the big vision, firm on the big vision, but flexible on the details. How you get there, very flexible.
How does Chris Williamson put it? Like strong opinions loosely held.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you don't need to hold on to all of your beliefs so tight.
Yeah.
And it's like we were saying with Soros, like it's those people who have success because they're willing to change their mind with new information.
Yep. Unfortunately, he doesn't change his mind politically.
True.
But that's another conversation.
True.
I have no opinion there.
So you mentioned Iman a little earlier, and what he's doing with Big Day is super interesting. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this whole world of like Jake Paul is doing it as well with like the new soap brand that he just came out with. W. Yeah. Oh yeah. And so these creators that are going to be Logan Paul with Prime, like these guys who are creating these businesses that are absolutely massive, but they're creator focused. And it's like, it seems like everything's kind of trending in that direction.
I spoke with Iman 2 weeks ago. Creators are in for a very rude awakening. Very rude. Iman, I think, is brilliant. How old is he? 23, 24?
24, maybe.
And even on the Zoom, he carries himself like he's been in the game for 20 plus years. And I actually think Big Day will ultimately succeed. But there's been a creator-led product bubble. How many people do you know that like Prime?
No one.
No one.
Shit tastes awful.
It's horrible.
So
it's not a good product. And yet Prime has gotten $1 billion in sales through brute force. Well, that's a cool story while it's going up. What eventually happens if you're in all these stores and people stop buying your shit? Well, the bubble starts to burst. Yep. And so the problem with a lot of these brands, there's two problems. There's a valuation disconnect. Like Jake, because of all the hype, Jake raised at $150 million pre-money valuation for W. And so that means any investor coming in, putting $1 million in, they're betting on that being $1 billion thing. Mm-hmm. Can Jake Paul carve out a $50 to $100 million business probably in his sleep? Yeah. Yeah. Can you create $1 billion company? That's like a whole nother, how many $1 billion companies are there in CPG? Not many, right? And so I think we're realizing that the product is really fucking important, like really important. And these creators aren't necessarily in the makeup of that. Like Logan and KSI were slapped on right with the bottle. Yep. You know, like they didn't wake up. Logan Paul didn't wake up and go, I want to build the next Gatorade. Someone pitched them. Congo Brands pitched them. And it creates all this hype and this momentum. But then the question is it a sustainable business? And if so, what is the real size of the business? And so my conversation with Iman was interesting. As we might get involved with Big Day. We might not, I don't, you know, I invest in some stuff, but drinks online is really tough. Chris Williamson too, with New Tonic. Drinks online, drinks are $1 billion industry, but it often requires a lot of capital and a very specific approach. And so, you know, Iman and I's conversation just revolved around strategy for getting enough cash flow to tackle that retail piece. And luckily he has stick packs. And like I said, when you have super intelligent operators that aren't afraid to pivot, like he's already kind of going like, oh, you know, he's thinking through all of it. He wants to build something huge. And the saving grace with that one is that was a company developed based off his actual interests, right? Like he actually was tired of chugging espresso all day and he wanted sparkling water with like it's a very good product market fit in my opinion. And so you can work with that. Yep. But in general, I think the creator-led brand thing is going to pop in the next couple of years.
And the second half of that you've talked about as well is like, it's almost impossible to sell those businesses because they're creator focused. And if the creator's not involved, then what's the evaluation there? It's impossible to tell.
It gets really tough. On the other side of that, you have, so Congo Brands that started Prime, they also built a business called Alani. Have you seen Alani Energy drinks?
Yeah.
And Alani was, they pretty much did it the right way. This was their first thing. They were building Genius as I was. It was a supplement company first. And Katie Hearn was the creator-led founder. More micro, like a couple 100,000, very cult-like following. But she came out with a product Balance, you know, hormone balance. And she had kids and helped with acne and all this stuff. Smashing home run e-com product. I'm pretty sure they're doing like 20 plus million on that alone. That ultimately led to the drinks. The drinks was as simple as, hey, girls like energy drinks. Mm-hmm. No one's marketing it to them. Let's do that. Alani was up for sale for $4 billion. I don't know if they'll get $4 billion, but that's how you do it right. Yep. Then they took those same relationships, tried to replicate it with Logan and KSI. And to your point, like they missed on a lot of the pieces.
And why do you think they missed? Just like bad product?
I think it's a bad product. I don't think there's a real story with it. Mm-hmm. I don't think Logan and KSI are drink experts. I don't think they give a shit about drinks. I think they love to hype it up and run around, and it's a lot of fun for a year until people stop buying.
Yeah. It's a crazy world, that whole e-com space with, like, the cool thing about Alani is, like, I've seen Alani a million times, and I would have never realized that it started as a creator-focused brand.
No, totally.
You know? And totally. I think that's really where the opportunity lies in it, where it's like...
Yeah, that's when it exists past the creator.
Exactly.
And it's exactly.
It's a very interesting thing. So ultimately, what do you think is going to happen with like a Prime? Do you think it's going to just win through brute force and stay in there? Or do you think like ultimately like a bankruptcy? Like what?
No, I don't think they'll, like, that's just one of those cases of the dream being much bigger than the actual size of the business. Okay. I think eventually they'll peel back on some of the retailers. What happens in retail is if you don't get velocity, if you don't get sell through, then eventually they drop you. Mm-hmm. And I know they extended into a bunch of stores as their velocity kind of pulled back. So they'll have some restructuring. I'm sure they'll have to, you know, this is my opinion, right? They could make it work somehow. But I think it's likely that they'll lose that velocity, they'll lose some stores, and the thesis was they're the next Gatorade, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. And I think at the end of the day, they maybe have themselves like a $100 million annual business that makes, 10, 15%.
Yeah, shit. And I'm so curious about, so your audience, obviously, mostly guys. What do you say, like between like 16 to 29? What would you say?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'm sure you get like a ton of DMs over and over again or the same message over and over again. What do you think some of those common questions are that you get from your audience?
The main one is where to start. And that drives me fucking crazy. You don't need to ask another grown man where to start. You go pick up your camera. You go start getting the reps in. You go to the gym, you shoot your shots. You don't ask someone for this step-by-step whatever, because the reality is none of this shit actually works like that. Like TikTok Shop is so new. I can point to the people that are making money and you can see exactly what they're doing, but it's on you to pick your phone up, get your shop account open, and start getting some reps in, right? And start figuring it out. And that's just entrepreneurship in a nutshell. Like when I found Amazon, I was figuring it out. This is an algorithm, A9 algorithm. Okay, well, what does the algorithm want? It wants high converting stuff and bigger order value. Like Amazon tells you, they want to maximize purchases per search. And so the more you stay curious and just have a fire about you that you're going to figure it out. If you're that guy on the internet asking any other person where to start, delete all social media. Delete all social media, because you've fallen into some trap that you think someone's going to hand you the life you want. And you need to go find it in the real world before you come back to social media.
Yeah, I want to touch on that obsession. But before that, I'm curious about the, it's like those details aren't transmittable, right? It's like that they think that step-by-step guide is going to get them to the $30 million exit. But it's all those little details and that awareness in the moment of the state of things, and that all changes with time. And like none of those little details or little things that you picked up on for yourself at that time, it's not the same game.
It changes faster and faster.
Yeah.
Technology accelerates, and so does the rate of change with all of this stuff. And so even within $1 Million Brand Club, it's not your typical like course and mentorship. Like I try to put together the timeless components and good strategies and good playbooks, like things that work. But then there's just a level of fluidity with all of it. Yeah. It's like, this is everything I've learned and this is how I do it and this is how we're doing it right now. But within all of that, there's pivots and there's little intricacies with each business and different keywords, and like so many different things make up a successful business. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I realized this over the last like couple months, honestly. I feel like maybe I just have like a strong mindset naturally, and I hadn't thought too much about it. But I realized a lot of people need to put more effort into that. I always thought like mindset talk, I didn't make mindset content because like it's corny. Like it just, I don't know. And then I realized like, no, like half of these motherfuckers need to figure out a way to get right up here before they actually try to pursue the thing. Because too many people, there's like self-doubt, or there's procrastination, or there's like fear. There's just all these different things that are ruining people that aren't necessarily tactical business items. Yep. And so I've been speaking more on that. It's like you gotta get yourself right up here first. That's why I think every young man should have some level of like self-improvement and kind of get into that world in some capacity without becoming religious with it. And then you get yourself to a place where you're ready to actually go.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That's why sports are so great for young people.
I think that was probably my cheat code.
Yeah.
Like I was,
Me as well.
I don't know, like I was 5'3" my sophomore year, and I wanted
that, dude.
I wanted to play varsity basketball, and so I got my ass kicked. Like but I tried so hard. Yep. Like all summer, I spent 8-9 hours a day trying to train, trying to lift weights. I just hadn't hit puberty yet, so I'm not getting more athletic. Mm-hmm. I'm hitting the weights, and I'm like, it's not working. But I put my soul into it, and then I still remember, tryouts that junior year. I was thinking like, this is my year. I'd grown to like 5'8". I could shoot. I was like, I'm gonna get a spot on this varsity team, at least swing JV varsity. And I remember, the list got posted, and I was like, JV. And I remember I went behind the bleachers and I cried and got clowned for that. But those really are the moments that I think make you a lot tougher. Yep. When you go into something with everything you have and it's sink or swim. Like that, I ended up walking onto my college team. I took that same mindset and I started training. Like I missed basketball. I took 2 years off, and I was like, I don't know, I'm going to walk onto this team. Very good D2 team. And typically they don't have spots open. And I start my process of training, like right as they're kind of finishing up their season. That team goes on to win the D2 national championship. And that was probably the worst thing that could happen for me, because now all of a sudden they get anyone and everyone they want. And it's like this prestigious powerhouse. And so that was like a gut punch. And what did I do? I doubled down. I went even harder. I started building the right relationships. I started to get to know the team. I was like, I'm going to do fucking everything. I'm going to make sure I bump into the coach on accident because he walks this way, you know, like there. And I ended up making it. They gave me a spot as like a practice player, and I worked my way up. But those are the moments that I think build a lot of character that prepare me for future business success. And so on that too, when things don't go great, it's like, that's again a mindset thing. It's like, no, it's a lesson. It's a lesson. Like you're being prepared for something in the future. Don't let it ruin you then. The faster you can cut off that negative thought and turn it to positive and continue forward without it knocking you down, that becomes a superpower. That becomes a compounding skill and effect. And I've been talking about this a lot, but you see like people that are like really iron-minded. I don't know if you can say like Tate on YouTube or whatever, but you look at like Tate, and regardless of what you think of him, like the fact that that dude went to prison, like literally went to prison after being king of the world, and still has come out of that like the same dude, if not stronger. You look at Trump too, same deal. Like regardless of what you think of the politics, he's got lawsuits, he's got all this shit. Like just most people wouldn't be able to stand under that weight. And 3 days after getting indicted, he walks into the UFC event and everyone's cheering him, and he's just yeah. And so like up here happened. Is strong. Yeah. Like regardless of what you think of any of the specifics, like okay, and I just see that stuff and it's like okay, yeah, I need to be preparing myself so hopefully when I'm 70 years old, nothing's gonna throw me off. I think, sorry, I'm just like going off here, but I think a lot of billionaires just have the ability to handle way more stress than average people. I think they've developed a stress tolerance. Like you look at Jeff Bezos, and he's got 50 houses and investments and businesses, and like that's the type of stuff we freak out over one business. Yeah, one thing doesn't go well, and so I'm even seeing at this stage of my career, it's like I got social media, our venture fund, my main brands, and some days it's going well here, and some days it's not going well there. And some days it's not going well here, and I got employee problems. But do I want to fixate on the negative, or do I want to be a man and never let any of that impact me and keep doing the things that needs to be done to get to the next step?
100%. And you had a great reframe. I watched your video with Ben today that Ben put up on his story, and the reframe that helped me so much in that moment was you said if you think of entrepreneurship as a sport, you're still in only. Like for me, I'm still in my rookie season, year. Baby. Yeah, and it's like
your rookie season.
And you think about that, and you think about how it's like a 50-year game. It's like that reframe just so helpful because it's like rookie year is fucking hard. Yeah, first 5 years are fucking hard. You
get knocked around. You're playing in the big leagues. Yep. Like hopefully you find a veteran mentor. Like
yeah,
I mean, it really is a sport, and I think that's beautiful because it's a sport where I don't need my knee to still work. It's all between the ears. Shout out Ben Bader. Shout out Ben Bader's beautiful girlfriend, Reem, and the inspiration she provides for all of his wonderful content. Sorry that people are going to laugh about that later.
It was a great video.
It was. Ben really is special. I think he's got a true artistic approach to everything he does with like a sound, philosophical. He's one of those guys that, he's younger and he's doing a great job of capturing this journey in all facets. Like, physically, we started that video boxing, right? Yep. He gets in there and spars with me. Like he's not... He's a little scared, but it's all good. So shout out Ben.
Yeah, it's cool too. Like I'm sure you're starting to notice this as well. You've been doing YouTube for a long time now. Being able to have that like video journal, video diary type of thing of looking back on seeing where you're at. Like even if you look back on your YouTube at the start, you're doing like fitness stuff. Yeah. And to see like your body evolve and how the way you talk and all these things, it's time lapses in time that not many people have. It's a very cool little thing to hold on to.
Instagram too. Me and Jimmy were just talking about that. Like when we first met, you look back to those photos, which is not that long ago. You'd be like, what's wrong? Who are these guys? And it's just like, all right, cool. Well, where are we gonna be at in a year? Let's keep the foot on the gas and keep this going. And so yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So I want to talk back to TikTok Shop for a minute because I'm building a business right now that is not very conducive to the world of TikTok Shop.
Okay.
And I'm curious on how important you think that is in the modern landscape since I'm a young guy and I do understand that game. I've built some TikTok accounts that have gone pretty viral. It's like, should I focus some of my energy on developing things for that world, because I fully believe and understand that there's a lot of value there in having those physical products that are very able to be converted into like an affiliate program.
Could we talk about the business? Like,
Yeah,
what the business
love
is?
to. Yeah,
What
yeah.
is it?
So we launched on February 4th. We're selling lab work direct to consumer.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have like blood, urine, stool, kind of the whole gamut. I
Yep.
did this mentorship with this guy, Dan Garner,
Okay.
he's a lab work analyst for professional athletes. And I saw he was doing this like huge array of tests with all these big name guys. And there was almost no way, unless you had a super cool doctor, to get those tests direct to consumer. So I just wanted to find a way to bring all that stuff direct to consumer.
Yeah, no, great business, and
Yeah.
an area that's going to continue to grow. TikTok Shop is a special sales platform, okay? But the underlying change here is just how people consume information and how you position your business for that. Remember when I said we went to Tokyo, the restaurants my wife wanted to go to were the ones that were doing really well on TikTok. And those will never be TikTok Shop businesses, but they figured out that game. And so I think for you, it's not a matter of like, you know, you don't need to be on that platform. You don't need to feel like you're missing out. Like that's the shiny object thing,
Exactly.
right? Whereas like for you, it's like you just know that short form content is disrupting the world. And you know, a business of the future is going to be well positioned in the short form content game, but not necessarily on Shop, you know? So I would think about it more like that and not feel the need to sell some physical product just because you're seeing other people kill it when you're already committed to this business.
Yep.
I'd more just be trying to leverage the platform itself. But Jimmy and I created the system for Top Shelf like a year before
Yeah.
TikTok Shop was a thing. We were leading people to Amazon. It was just a matter of being discovered. So Shop's like a sweet bonus, and you can get more affiliates, and there's like a lot of cool pieces to it, but it's not the holy grail.
And who do you think's doing that really well? Would it be like George Heaton with like Represent, who's just kind of documenting that journey and like,
I don't think many people are doing it better than George.
yeah.
From a physical product brand, from that type of world. I was actually just texting him. I think we're gonna do an interview next
That'd be
month.
awesome.
I'm a huge fan of George.
Yeah,
like I
he's
think
great.
when you talk about living for a living and bringing lifestyle into everything you do, like 24/7, the subline is just because he's a hybrid athlete and he lives that, and he's got all sorts of people on it, and he's probably created an additional 9-figure revenue stream because of that, right? Incredibly well-ran business. But from your standpoint, I would live like that for sure. But I would also just be thinking about things like, how can you leverage that platform even without you, right? Like, can creators do, you know, the importance of blood work, and can you come up with cool stuff that goes viral? George is a figurehead, and I'm curious, you know, if they sell that business, how much key man risk has become attributable to him. They were already a 9-figure company before he started posting.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's an incredibly well-ran business, but there's that duality. So yeah, continue to live it. But like with Top Shelf, I don't drive a lot of the sales. Like I'm all about it and I put it there, but I'm not like, no one's gonna go look at numbers and be like, oh yeah, this is a key man risk. You know, I'm more just, it's this like public experiment, you know, guinea pig thing I get to work on in public, and that does resonate with people, but the business itself is driven by creators, is driven by Amazon, right? And so
I knew you. I knew the brand and I knew you, and I didn't. And it was like many months, so I realized it was your shit. Yeah. So just to your point, it's very interesting there when you think about like going back to what we were saying before about the creator-led stuff. But I want to touch back on obsession and the mindset stuff, because I feel like a lot of people have that entrepreneurship fury or like that kind of heat in their heart to do something like that.
Yeah.
But they don't really know how to find that thing that they're obsessed with. They don't know where to go. What do you think advice you'd have for finding that obsession?
Me and Ben were just talking about this. Obsession is found in flow, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Like obsession just means you can pour into something. That's why it's like so easy for athletes. When you love that sport, you can commit to it. It's not hard for Kobe to get up and go to the gym and shoot at 4 a.m, you know, because that's where his heart is. And that holds true for any young entrepreneur. I mean, lean into a space that you are actually excited about. That's kind of counterintuitive. For whatever reason, the narrative became like, you know, fuck following your passion, do what makes money.
Yep.
And I mean, that can work, But at the same time, if you're trying to optimize your life, like you're zooming out of just the money, and then you leverage the fact that we exist in this internet era where everything's being sold and you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you lean into an area you want to do? Like, if you're building a brand, it's not about finding the extremely hot thing and trying to milk it. It's about hopefully you have interest in that, and hopefully you have interest in that brand, and you can make it part of your life, and so it doesn't feel like work. That's my philosophy on all of it.
That's why I love the life maxing stuff, because it combines those two things together.
And you get more out of it is the end result, because the guy that chose the shitty business when it's not going well, you know, he can do it for years probably if he's a real dog, but at a certain point, you know, my dad's a good example. Distribution. Consumer electronic distribution is about as blue collar, like it's not a cool business. It's a shitty business. And he's a guy that doesn't need to feel like he's a guy that'll just go work every single day forever indefinitely. And I'm seeing now that he's at an older phase in his life, he wants nothing to do with it. No, he's not the same person. The joy's gone. Like you know what I mean? He's forgot how to live.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I said, he's about as strong mentally as you could, like truly as strong mentally as you can be. Like, you know, oldest of 5, his mom had him when he was 14, like was scooping ice cream to help pay the bills for the family. I mean, like really as strong as you can be. But even him now at this phase in his life, as he's rounding into his 60s, it's like, oh shit. You know, like there's more to this whole life thing, and and he does not want to do that business. He used to, you know, take pride in going to work every day. Now he doesn't want to do it. And it's interesting to see that unfold.
Yeah, you can't white knuckle things forever.
You can't.
Yeah,
you can do it for a long time, but then the question just becomes like, what kind of life do you want to be living when you're 80 years old and you look back? Like, what do you want to have said you did?
Yep. I was listening to Thurston talk about this with like your physique, and I think the question he asked was like, can you get a great physique if you don't love training? And I think the conclusion that him and the guest came to was like, you could probably get there, but you're probably not going to be able to like stay there, because it's hard to just hold on to that if you don't love that thing.
And then even on that note, it's like, we talk about being well-rounded. What component of fitness is the thing you are finding flow in?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to love LA Fitness, traditional bro split, going to Chipotle after getting swole. And then I thought I'd do that forever. And then 5-6 years, the training kind of, you know, I'm not liking it as much.
Yeah.
And then I found martial arts and the combat stuff, and I love it. Like, I cannot wait to go fucking spar. Like, it's what I like to do. And I think that, you know, there's so many physical fitness activities that one can partake in. You just have to find the one that you actually are going to spend the time doing.
Yeah. And it goes back to that flow state. And I wish I knew like the percent of adults that have found flow like in the past year. It's probably like few and far between. If they don't have the physical outlet and their work is just the traditional 9-to-5 stuff, there's probably, outside of the football game that they watch on Sunday, there isn't anything.
And that's why this idea of like a matrix exists, because, you know, we have a very limited perspective, like a privileged perspective, because we exist in this world. We see other people taking up these things, but then you go talk to like a normie, and it is that there's not hours in the day, and they're getting drained under blue light all day, and their soul's being ripped out of them, and they go escape by watching that fucking sports ball game.
Yep.
And that's, but on the flip side of that, it's like literally never been easier to craft whatever life you want. And so I've been leaning more into that, like the whole matrix thing is like it's a cope.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective, because it's not like it's like this design system to like get you, I guess in some ways it might be, but
it's the end result of like modern capitalism where we're at. Like that's what it is.
It's not like this malicious thing that was
exactly.
designed
There's not a bunch of
way.
Coats sitting around going, we want lab rats in here, and we're
exactly.
Like, that's not what it is.
Yeah, that's what you've been talking about when you're like BlackRock isn't trying to control you.
Well, BlackRock is an investment management fund. Like, they don't control these companies. They can move some money around. They have influence, but they don't run the world.
Yep.
And that whole narrative breaks down when you start thinking from a global perspective. Like, what does BlackRock have to do with Russia? What does BlackRock have to do with China? You know what I mean? Like, China's that is the other world power. They have incredible influence. They own TikTok, and BlackRock doesn't have anything to do with them. Yeah. Zero.
Exactly. And I like all those conspiracy theories where it doesn't have anything to do with like capitalism at its core. I just can't get behind. Like, I can't believe
they're sexy and they're interesting, and like we all fall into them. Like, I loved Alex Jones when I was 21 years old, because
it's fun.
He's a truth seeker, and oh my god, like it's really fun until you see your life break down and become all of it with no end result. Like, you're not making any money. Your life isn't getting better. One of my favorite YouTubers who needs to get back on his shit, Michael Drift, he sent me a text yesterday, and he goes, hold on, I got to find this one for you.
Yeah, pull it up.
It's really good. He goes, this is going up on a photo dump at some point. In all honesty, no bullshit, I wish I was in on this life maxing before I got wrapped up in all of the truth-telling missionary matrix complex. Shit was so real for me, it's insane. It's kind of comical now in hindsight. Like, he was like, all in, you know? They're turning the frogs gay. They're trying to ruin you. Like, there's truth in a ton of that stuff. But when you make it your identity and, like, make that the reason why you can't or can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like
becomes
this.
like a victim thing.
It becomes a victim thing really fast.
Yeah. Taking back ownership of a lot of things. That it's like that mindset side of things that really propels you forward, like that almost like extreme ownership. It seems like that's at the core of a lot of success.
It is. It definitely is. And I mean, there's not much else to say on it. I think that idea of the matrix needs to drift away, and it will, because all do, you know? You have like the Tates of the world that popularized it and are fighting some real powers, but they pissed off some people with some real power. I mean, like Kanye's no different. You know, Kanye's always been a guy that speaks his mind, and this latest go around, he pissed off a group with a lot of power, and that the result is the result. It's not like some conspiracy. It's just like that is what happens.
Yeah.
Focus on getting your own power up. Focus on getting your own money up, you know, your own influence up.
Exactly. How are you thinking about that type of stuff now that you're a dad, and you think about how, in a lot of ways, like the food, whether it's the food or the water or whatever, there's a lot of shit going on that you can't really control, like junk food and that whole world of things. How do you feel like you're trying to craft that life for you and your family that is rooted in what you want it to be rooted in?
It comes down to education. It's tough raising kids in today's world.
Yeah.
There's plenty of pitfalls. You get like a really close view of seeing how people end up the way they end up, right? You see from birth until that office job. You see that evolving in the classroom with their programming with the phones and all that. And the tricky part is you can't force anything on kids. Like, what happens when you tell a kid not to do something?
They want to do it.
They want to do it.
Yeah.
And so it really comes down to being more neutral and a strong figure who has conviction and who lives the things they live. So you're never like you're not a hypocrite. They don't look at it like, oh, that's that. And then just trying to provide them the education so they can let their own thoughts develop and enable a level of freedom in their own minds so that they'll be okay in this complex world, because it's going to change even more. But that's how I think about fatherhood.
How have you been thinking about like the technology piece of it? Does it freak you out at all?
It doesn't. Technology with kids doesn't scare me in the sense of it's ruining them, because I think net it's going to create a better future world for them. There's all sorts of pitfalls, because like we know the dopamine, we know you talk to any 20-year-old girl now who sits on Instagram and vapes all day, there's no attention span. Like, she can barely hold a fucking thought. And so how do you navigate that? But it's just like TikTok. You have 1 billion consumers of that information, and you have a handful of string pullers or observers that are going to use that platform for their own good. And so I'm already showing my daughter, you know, if she's watching a YouTube, because I'm not gonna remove technology from them and have them be the weird kid.
Exactly.
But it's like, hey, Rosie, that's an ad. You're seeing an ad. They're trying to sell you something. There's you know what I mean? Like, I'm teaching her what's going on behind the scenes in hopes of her picking that up and thinking through it herself, and her thinking about an ad, you know? And it's like, well, that person's selling this. That's how daddy sells this, and that's how this pays for this. And just trying to give them a more holistic understanding of the world at large.
What do you think about the world of AI right now?
AI is exciting. It is. Again, a lot of these changes, like if you go back 50 years ago, there was a poll on like, where do we think we're going to be in the future? And the answers were, you know, flying cars and all that. And instead we got, you know, Priceline to Mexico, right? Like, that's kind of that's the Peter Thiel quote. And with all of that, I don't think AI, I think it'll just become ubiquitous with kids' lives. Like, they'll not need to think for a lot of things, just like with Google. How much has Google changed our life, right?
Yeah.
So I think it'll be much more like that. I don't fear it. I kind of open it, I welcome it with open arms. I think like anything, you're going to have more competing forces. Maybe AI has their own agenda. Maybe Elon starts something different. There'll be all sorts of different intricacies of it. But as a whole, I don't fear it. I don't think we're headed to a Terminator scenario. And I think ultimately it'll make life better, but it'll come with all sorts of pitfalls that we need to look out for on an individual perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like you look at Back to the Future, which like when they went to the future was like a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they had all the flying like hoverboards and all that type of thing, and
capitalism went wrong somewhere. We didn't get there. We should have our flying cars.
Exactly. But with the AI stuff, like, do you feel like you're properly using it with the business? Do you feel like there's some things there that you could be using better that you just aren't aware of, or like?
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's everything with technology. I think we try to lean into it without getting too distracted.
Yeah.
Like you can't be like, remember Hormoz, you had that AI video go viral of like, these are the 10 things I've made my team use, like da 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 da. I bet you they're not using any, like maybe 2 of those in like a practical sense. And so it just ties back to finding the highest leverage things and sticking with those. Like, Chat GPT is great.
Yeah.
I use it for a lot of things now. And, we'll use DALL-E 2 for images. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, it's like, I'm not looking for a silver bullet. We have a system that works, and as ideas come, observe them. If they make sense, plug them in. If not, like don't stress over it.
Yeah, and a lot of those tools, like, they're rosy or they look so shiny on the outside.
Super shiny. But that video went viral. It was like super viral. I bet you all those apps got a ton of downloads, and I bet you no one's using them anymore.
Exactly. And I'm sure it's been really interesting on the TikTok side of things. And you've had some experiences with like affiliates using the AI stuff. Mm-hmm. You see like the AI voiceovers and the AI images and all that world. That's a whole nother side of it. That's pretty interesting as well.
And that's just fun. I think
it's really creative. Like,
and in my heart, like I'm an artist. Like I love creativity, and there's this whole school of thought that it's going to ruin creatives, right? And I think it's going to be the creatives that lean into it and master it that are going to change the game entirely, because the AI still needs something to build off of. Mm-hmm. And so it'll flesh out a lot of the amateurs, but I think it'll give incredible proliferation to those that are really about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like giving the people with really good taste the leverage to have a lot of success.
Like everyone's seen those videos on TikTok now of, the mysterious sound and then the Adam 11's Lab's voice over it. We invented that. And I say we, it wasn't me. Shit. It was, this kid Max who lives over in Germany who was just thinking outside the box. And then he invented that, and he made a bunch of money, and it was a top shelf product. And this is what happened to your body if you drink out, And then everyone copies it, and all of a sudden it's on everyone's algorithm. And so I think that'll hold true in a lot of artistry.
Was there like a big like holy shit with all that stuff for you guys, since you were really at the forefront of that?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a constant like holy shit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's a constant holy shit, and that's where Jimmy, what he pushes the creators to do is innovate. Mm-hmm. Like, because the natural thing is that video works, then everyone copies it. Mm-hmm. But who's innovating? Who's thinking through like, this is how the algorithm works, and this is how we need to disrupt it? And not to get like too off AI, but like one of my favorite creative outlets on my IG is the photo dumps. Like I love photography. Those. I love, we got the film camera over there. We've been snapping a couple, right? But they weren't gaining a ton of steam on just the photos. And so like a year ago, I was like, I love these photo dumps, but it's killing my engagement. I was like, wait a second, it needs to be, this is how the algorithm works. It needs to be shareable. It needs to be savable. Start infusing like clever memes into the photo dump, like things that people would really, really like. And you kind of tell a story on the whole thing. And I don't know if I was like the very first person to do that, but I was early in that. And now a lot of people do that. It's like photo dump, shareable meme, other lifestyle photo. And that's the creativity I think people need to, the lens people need to think through.
Yeah, I've definitely screenshotted a few of those, got those in the camera roll.
They're rob the bank
good
photo
ones, bro.
Those are
they're fucking
staple.
Awesome. So do you think your family, you want to stay in Puerto Rico long term with the family?
I do. I am obsessed with Dorado Beach. My kids are starting school over there. The schools there are better than, we had a home in Dallas, and like one of the more put together areas, and even, it's like a good school there. Dorado beats that. I don't pay taxes. It's optimal weather year round. I can get my son. It's just accumulation of people that share that same frame of mind that things are changing, and what was won't be. And most people cling on to that desperately. I never thought I'd leave Seattle. Like seriously, never.
Yeah.
I never thought I would. And then, we had that event in 2020 where everything changed. And
Is that when you moved?
That was when I moved. Everyone was kind of forced to look around and go like, where's the world actually going? Yeah. And then what makes sense? And that was the only thing that made sense. So we didn't know we'd be there that long, but we wanted to try it out. Like let's have some balls and make a move. And, I bought the house and really risked it. But looking back, that was like one of those decisions that, okay, that's a staple.
Yep.
Because just inherently it's like, hey, if I was still married to just Amazon, my business would be stagnant.
Yep.
But things are changing. Short form content's here. And that general philosophy, that fluidity, that being like water, that is one of those traits that's timeless. That's one of those mindset things that's timeless. And unfortunately, you can't drill it home for everyone.
What's a day-to-day looking like right now for you? Like you mentioned how a lot of the quote unquote work isn't really work right now for you.
I have two different modes. And I think everyone needs to find these in their life. I was talking about this with Ben. There's this duality, the yin and yang of chaos and order. And I didn't consciously know this, but it's what I've been doing my whole life. I've been finding that balance between routine, where I'm thriving in progress and all the things, and then just total chaos, where I'm in a totally different environment with no routine and I'm figuring it out. And the chaos is short-lived and the routine is the stability. And so like in Dorado, it's not a complicated life. I wake up, I go get sun, I caffeinate, I work, my MMA coach comes over, we train, I spend time with my family, I work some more, I walk on the beach, maybe shoot some content, and then I do it again. And I'll do that for like a month, 6 weeks, and then it gets stale. There's a diminishing return. I'm not training as hard. And so that's when I go to Miami for a week, and kick it with Jimmy and shoot more content and go like do something entirely different just for like a week. Yeah. But I got my gym there. And so now as I'm making more money and progressing like further along, it's like, okay, I still want the extreme spontaneous thing, but then I also want bases. Like I have a condo here now in Miami because I know I have a very particular workstation. And so can I have something that looks like a routine here? Like, do I have my staple gym? Do I have the restaurants I eat at? Now I have that in Miami. I have it in Austin too. Yep. And my business partner's there and he has this crazy penthouse and he doesn't use it. So I took over one of his bedrooms. Nice. Like I bought a standing desk and got a little cowboy wardrobe there. And so I'll hop to Austin from time to time.
Let's go.
And that allows for a constant stimulation that I think is necessary within humanity. Yeah. This whole dwelling in one spot thing, it's really important for families and kids and moms. But we were hunters and gatherers by nature. Like there was a lot of movement. There was a lot of stimulation. And so how can you kind of biologically hack into that a little bit for like maximum productivity without being one of those weird biohackers that needs to spend, 3 hours on a morning routine or they don't feel like they're doing anything, know?
Yeah, I think about that a lot for myself. It was like...
You don't have a crazy morning routine, do you?
No,
okay,
no.
Right,
I meant like thinking more about that for myself, meaning like I love the spontaneity and being able to like be super fluid and being like, oh, Rob's in Miami, let's fly to Miami, blah blah blah, let's do this, let's do that, and then thinking about that wanting to maintain that as I get older, but also wanting to like have a family and do that type of thing.
You really solve for both, and because routine is where a lot of the progress is pushed forward. Yep. Like straight up, when I'm like locked in a workflow, pushing the team along. Like if I'm gone too long, like March, I ended up on just kind of like a travel wise, like I ended up on the road for like 5 weeks. It was when I got stuck in Dubai. I had to do this interview in Texas, never made it back to PR. And it was like, by the end of that, shit was it wasn't like falling apart, but it was like, all right, like I hurt the business by not getting back to stability.
Yeah, but the good side of that also is like that push forward. It's like a slingshot forward because then
100%. Then
you're like locked in.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I can go 2 months. Yep. Into, exactly. It's the yin and yang.
Yep, exactly.
I think everyone needs to find that.
Yeah. And do you think, has that been hard with like having the family being in Puerto Rico?
No, honestly, it's been like it's a super stable base and like there's no distractions there. Like it really is kind of the perfect like home base. And then I couldn't imagine having home base in Miami at where I'm at in life. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it works for Jimmy. This is his main thing, but you really kind of got to find where you're at in life. Like hey, within 5 years, I really hope my summers are in Jackson. Like I hope I have a place there. And
dude, that place is so sick.
Jackson's amazing. I
Looks,
love Jackson.
I need to get out there. It seems so amazing.
Yeah, all the Aspen lovers. I'm sorry, you guys are missing out.
Ooh, Jackson Hole, dude, that place is beautiful. You want like a farm out there?
No, I just want like a nice. All right, what I really want. We'll see if we can bring this to fruition one day. But do you know Amman Hotels?
Yes.
So Amman's like world class, and they do residences.
Yeah.
Really, really world class residences, and they're gonna do a project out there, and it'll start at like 30 million. You know, for like a nice house part of the hotel, looking at the Tetons, like all glass. But that would be like an ideal world where you have that for summer, and then they can throw it in the pool for winter and make a little money on it. But that's kind of where I have my sights set.
How do you think about like spending money now that you have a family? Because I know you mentioned before that when you first got the money, you sat on it for a few years because you didn't really know what to do with it. Like, what have you learned from that process of going from living at home to getting this big payday? And how do I think about reserving that money versus spending that money? It's an interesting dichotomy.
The benefit of the 2 years of not doing anything with that money is you really do have to learn how to be rich. A lot of people don't learn how to be rich, and that's where they blow a lot of it. And learning to be rich simply means getting that money to work for you.
Yeah.
Like if you can position yourself in a way that, you know, your money is making money, that's freedom, right? Like a $7 million payday sitting in the bank loses money year over year. And like eventually you'll be poor. Like if you do nothing with it, you know what I mean? Like it won't outpace inflation. And that enables freedom. So in that 2 years, I learned a lot about like what it means to be rich. And so I have like a set flow of income, you know, from that chunk. And then everything else, like I've just tried to really operate from a place of abundance with it. Because what I found is the more I put it out there, like that jet, right? That is not something I would have done a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. The indirect impact that has on like morale and energy is exponential. Like I swear, everything I've put out there in like excess, you know, going in, one of my new hires, big hire for us, he comes in, he's a little, you know, like set some goals for him. And basically, bro, you hit this, I'm gonna go buy you a Rolex. And that's like a crazy thing for an employee that's been there 2 months. And he crushed it. And I went and bought him that Rolex and I gave it to him. That's and dope. He about shit his pants. And he was like, holy shit, like my life's changing too. And those intrinsic things that aren't directly measurable, there's no return on that Rolex. Like I bought it personally, you know, I'm just like, but fuck it. I want to bring that energy. I want to be that. So I've really just tried to embrace that while still being calculated of what's being made. Yep. You know, you like don't go into credit card debt. Don't be conscious of where you're at, but don't be that guy that's treats money like it's a zero-sum game, because it really is abundant and it really is numbers on a screen and it's always coming and going, and it doesn't hurt to tip $100 on $100 dinner bill from time to time to make someone else's life better. All that stuff comes back to you. That's my opinion.
And then it's like, what's the point of having money if you're just saving it away?
Zero.
Yeah.
Zero. I know another extremely wealthy guy who's 70, who you would never know he has a dime. He's probably worth like 100 million. He was an optometrist, and he's been following me on social, like loosely. And he goes, I wish I did a lot more of the things you did. And he's 70 years old. And he went to Burning Man last year for the first time. And I think that's like a warning for a lot of people. You know, I think he'll have a great next 10 years. But it's like, I know he wishes he could have been, if he was doing that in his 50s, like, okay, now you have $98 million instead of 100. There's a level of inertia that happens with wealth, and it compounds. And as long as you're relatively calculated with it, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so what's like exciting you right now? Do you think outside of the world of TikTok Shop, is there anything that's like really, really getting you going right now?
Life maxing as a whole is exciting me. That text I got from Michael Drift, where he's going, because it's the opportunity to get a parabolic shift on the culture. Yep. Like I want to see more guys, because what happens if everyone's operating at that frequency? The world becomes a better place, right? Like people are achieving more, and as a result, the whole thing is lifting. Maybe, you know, maybe there can be so much economic progress and growth. We have a New York you want to live in again, you know, and like stuff like that. Exactly. And so that's what's exciting me. It's not a monetary thing. It's just seeing the early signs of this movement where people are changing, men and women. Like I'm seeing their lives change. These creators who 18, 19 years old, making 20, 30,000, you know, one just bought like, I'm bad with cars, like a some BMW SUV, $60,000 car at 19, and you're like that, and he's gonna make more money. He's gonna start he's starting a brand now. And it's like it's so fun to watch this catalyst, and it's not tied to specifically TikTok Shop. It's a much broader thing. It's philosophical, and I like having that impact.
I love it because it's like, at the end of the day, what else is there?
Exactly.
That's for enjoying life.
Exactly. And that's where we fall into this trap that, like, we forget it can be taken away tomorrow. I could walk out of here and a car could hit me. You know what I mean? And it's like, did I live a good life up to that point? And I just always want to be able to say yes at this point.
Yeah.
I had that whole health scare with the, melanoma. They cut that cancer off my ear. And that's what prompted all of this. That fucked me up. It was like, oh, okay, if I was a couple weeks later, my next 2 years are on a hospital bed doing treatment. And it's like, shit. Like, I wish I did this and that and that and that. And so it like created this frenzy of like, let me start, like I have the money, let me start doing the things. Yeah. And then the more I started doing the things, the more doors started open and the more growth there was. And I was like, wait, maybe this is the secret. Mm-hmm. And we've just leaned into that, and life's been fantastic ever since.
It's so interesting how so often it's like those really scary moments that propel you to do the thing that you actually need to be doing.
Almost always. Yeah. I mean, almost always. Like even Genius, the big catalyst was my grandma unexpectedly passing away. My Nana, she was like the center of our family, and life's like going good. I hadn't dealt with any loss. We're like flowing through life. And then one day my mom calls me. I was early Amazon stuff. I'm sitting there, but still like, I'm going to the gym, like not thinking too much of it. And she calls me and she's like, your dad took Nana in for an operation this morning. She had a surgery on her leg and she didn't wake up, and everything just kind of froze. I was like, what? And she was still alive. She was, out, her heart stopped for 55 minutes and they revived her. And so she's essentially brain dead, and they kept her alive all week in the ICU with all of our family there. And it was like, I didn't realize at the time, it was like a traumatic thing. Mm-hmm. I don't realize that. I'm like this is my first thing, and I'm trying to hold it together for everyone. I see my dad cry for the first time. And that was one of those moments, I remember when they like did pull the plug. It was on freaking Easter, and everyone just held hands and they took the plug out, and it was Elton John's Rocket Man playing, and she took her last gasp, and it flatlined, and that's it. And that was one of those moments. I remember going to the window and looking out and like, feeling like, are there spirits? Are there, like, it was a surreal thing. And then we went and had lunch after, and then I go back to the gym the next day, and it's like this modified life all of a sudden where you're reminded that happens. Like, oh shit, my dad's next, like that's going to be horrible. And through that lens, you go, well, what do I want to be doing? Do I want to be doing the bullshit, going, having beers at Billy McHale's with the guys, or do I want to be creating a life that I'm proud of and leaving some sort of mark? And so it really is those most painful moments and traumatic moments that we become who we need to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then after that, you think about as well when you got all your views taken off of Amazon. Mm-hmm. And then that propelled you to a whole nother level of success, even though at the time that almost like ruined the business in a way.
Oh, it was horrible. That was my first time away. So I told you I went like, I guess, pseudo monk mode or whatever my version of that was. Spent 2 years working on this business, built it up to like, I don't know, I think we were 10 or 12 million at the time. Like things are finally starting to stabilize. And then I go to Ireland, first time I've ever been out of the country, get married. And that night, Amazon starts fucking killing our products. And I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? And when it was all said and done, they killed half of it. And we had a decision to make. It was like, we got a couple $100,000 or like $1 million in the bank. Do we take that and run and say we had a business, or do we take that money and double down? And we were one of the few people that took that money and looked at the other businesses that were hurting. And so let's go after those categories. Yeah. Let's find out this new normal. And, we doubled the business with that. And then all of our old stuff came back like 6-7 months later. And that was one of those moments in hindsight, like you're tested and you have to find out what you're made of. And I don't trade that for anything.
No doubt. And I want to end by talking about synchronicities, because it's, I never had any experiences like that. And then I had all this weird shit that led me to doing the podcast. And it sounded like you had a very interesting kind of similar experience with that whole world. And it's hard to like know what to make of those experiences.
We really are led when we're silent and we have peace. Our intuition and our heart knows what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah. Steve Jobs said that, and I've experienced that time and time again. We get frazzled with thoughts. Consciousness is like a blessing and a curse because it can dominate and take you away from your heart, from your intuitive sense. But when you're silent, like, there's this thing in us that just knows what we're supposed to be doing. And when we're in tune with that, we find those other people. Like the Jimmy relationship as a whole, the fact that it even came to be, the way we reconnected with another, old colleague of mine who's been like a staple in the business. All of this stuff happens how it's supposed to when you're at peace and when you're doing the things you're supposed to. And again, I keep bringing back to the life maxing thing. Like, when you're focused on becoming who you need to be, you really do attract everything else. Like, it's almost cliche, but it also is incredibly practical. As mystical as it is, it's also incredibly practical. No. And I think, again, like, finding a way to operate in that flow is what will set so many people apart.
No doubt. And if you're locked up in that bedroom doing monk mode, those synchronicities, like, they won't come.
They melt away.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Keep fucking doing your thing, bro.
Yeah.
For real.
I appreciate
For real. You got
that,
a good thing going here. And I'm excited to see where you take this podcast. Hopefully get some views on this one to help it grow. But for real, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I
appreciate that, dude. Anything we haven't talked about you think that's fundamental, or you'd be remiss if we didn't mention?
No, I think we need to run it back in like a year, though.
Yeah.
And check in. I think that's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, brother. For real.
Thank you, bro.